And away we go, episode 1159 of the Al Galdi podcast. It is Friday, September 19th, 2025, and the intrigue over whether the Commanders' QB1 will be playing in the team's game against the Las Vegas Raiders at Northwest Stadium this Sunday afternoon at 1 continues. Jayden Daniels, the knee injury, he on Thursday afternoon did not practice for a second consecutive day. The Commanders' final injury report for the game comes out on Friday. And so Friday, a big day regarding the status of JD5 for Sunday afternoon. Hello and welcome to this Friday installment of the Al Galdi podcast. In order to get properly fired up for Commanders Raiders, let us indulge in one of the greatest pieces of audio ever. The classic NFL Films piece, The Autumn Wind. Many of you have probably heard this, but if you've never heard this, you're in for a treat. This is narrated by the legendary John Facenda, who had one of the greatest voices that anyone has ever had. I don't normally like to pay homage to opposing teams, but this piece is just too good. Here you go.
The autumn wind is a pirate, blustering in from sea. With a rollicking song, he sweeps along, swaggering boisterously. His face is weather-beaten. He wears a hooded sash, with a silver hat about his head, and a bristling black mustache. He growls as he storms the country, a villain big and bold. And the trees all shake and quiver and quake as he robs them of their gold. The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won.
Yeah, man, that right there is like an injection of testosterone. You know, that right there is like a full-scale TRT treatment. And the music right there, that might be the single most famous piece of music from NFL Films. Coming up on the show, in-depth preview of Commanders Raiders. Next segment, the latest on Commanders injuries for the game and reaction to comments from offensive coordinator Kliff Kingsbury and defensive coordinator Joe Whitt Jr. on Thursday, including telling comments from Kingsbury on running back Jacory Croskey-Merritt and notable comments from Whitt on interior defensive lineman Javon Kinlaw and linebacker Frankie Luvu. The following segment, a deep dive on the Raiders, as we'll speak with Commanders insider Tashan Reed of the Washington Post. He just joined the Post off having covered the Raiders for The Athletic since April 2020. Tashan will give us excellent insight on, among other things, the Raiders' limited partner Tom Brady, his involvement with the Raiders. And then the segment after that, my rhyming keys for a Commanders win over the Raiders and my prediction for the game. Also on the show, college football, GaldiLocks for the FBS teams of the Mid-Atlantic region for Week 4 of the 2025 season, and discussion of Maryland and also Virginia Tech. The Terrapins are at Wisconsin Saturday at noon in the Terps Big Ten opener. The Hokies are home to Wofford Saturday at noon in the first game for Phillip Montgomery as Tech's interim head coach. And on the show, we'll talk Orioles. So they lost to the New York Yankees 7-0 at Oriole Park at Camden Yards on Thursday night. giving the O's 15 shutout losses in MLB's 2025 regular season, in which the O's now are an American League East worst 72-81, clinching a non-winning regular season. Before we get to some feedback, yet another reported candidate for the Nationals head of baseball operations position, Boston Red Sox executive vice president and assistant general manager Eddie Romero, that per multiple reports on Thursday morning. You can hit me up on X at Al Galdi. You can email me, the Al Galdi podcast at yahoo.com. Email from Clifton Sheets on the Commanders' kicker situation, writes Clifton. I couldn't watch the second half of the debacle in Green Bay, but if I counted correctly, we missed 2 field goals. If those had been made, the final score would have been 27-24, and perhaps the last Commanders' possession would have had less desperation. Thank you for the email, Clifton. Commanders kicker Matt Gay in that loss at the Packers went just 1 for 3 on field goals, so went 1 for 1 on extra points. Gay connected on a 51-yard field goal with 4:27 left in the second quarter, but on a 4th and 4 for the Commanders at the Packers 40 with 19 seconds left in the second quarter, Gay was wide left on a 58-yard field goal attempt, and on a 4th and 13 for the Commanders at the Packers 34 with 12 minutes left in the third quarter, Gay hit the right upright on a 52-yard field goal attempt. Matt Gay, over his 2 regular seasons with the Indianapolis Colts, went just 64 for 78 on field goals. 11 of the 14 missed field goal attempts came on field goal attempts of at least 50 yards. He has problems with field goal attempts of at least 50 yards, and that's a problem because the standard in the NFL now is as follows. Any field goal attempt of less than 50 yards should be a near automatic make, and field goal attempts of at least 50 yards should be made more than missed. All over the NFL right now are kickers routinely making field goal attempts of at least 50 yards. Email from Devin Bradley with some complaints about the Commanders and more. Writes Devin, Dan Quinn has Tell the Truth Mondays. Can we have Festivus Fridays? Why Festivus? Because Festivus is for the rest of us, and it begins with the airing of grievances, of which I have a few. Why doesn't Kliff Kingsbury cover his mouth with the call sheet when he makes the calls? For many of the games last season and now this season, a camera would zoom in on him while he was making his calls, and he would not be covering his mouth with the call sheet. Matt LaFleur covers his mouth, and it seems like most other coordinators around the league make a concerted effort to do this. The majority of color commentators on NFL broadcasts make the games less enjoyable to watch. I wish there was a play-by-play only version available. I would pay extra to only listen to the play-by-play announcer. There are a few good analysts, but the majority of them talk too much, overanalyze the plays, and exaggerate the greatness or complexity of a play. Kirk Herbstreit was pretty good in the loss at the Packers, but usually when I watch the Redskins, I end up muting the TV for much of the game. When listening to most of the analysts, I enjoy the game less. When something important happens or there's a call on the field, I will unmute the TV to find out what's going on, but then usually mute the TV again because the analyst irritates me. When it comes to analysis, less is more. For the next Redskins game, if you're looking to celebrate a victory or drown your sorrows after a loss, watch Dan Quinn's post-game press conference and play this game. Every time you hear the phrase, into that space, to go, how we get down, hit the marks, or brotherhood, take a drink, you will be 3 sheets to the wind before the press conference is over. Lastly, Galdi, I have one grievance for you. When I was a kid and Cal Ripken would hit a 3-run homer, the sportscaster summarizing the game afterwards would say that Cal Ripken had a home run and 3 RBIs. He would not say 3 RBI. While it may be grammatically correct or proper to say RBI, it doesn't sound right. I liken it to if I come home and our door is locked and I knock on the door and the kids come to the door and say, "Who is it?" And I say, "It's me, Dad, open the door." I do not say, "It is I, your father." I wish to enter the premises promptly. After the airing of grievances comes the feats of strength, so I head to the gym to get huge. Keep up the good work. Your podcast is the best. Thank you for the email, Devin. Festivus for the rest of us, as Jerry Stiller, as Frank Costanza said on the GOAT sitcom Seinfeld many years ago. I am an RBI man. I am not an RBIs man. The phrase is runs batted in, not runs batted ins. And let me ask you this. Why is it okay to say yak, but not RBI? Have you ever thought of that? Yak, yards after catch. Nobody says yaks. We say yak because yak is correct. Same thing with RBI. One of the greatest video games of all time is RBI Baseball. I grew up on RBI Baseball on Nintendo. The name of the game was not RBI's Baseball. No, the name of the game was RBI Baseball. Long live RBI Baseball. Tony Armas Unstoppable in the original version of RBI Baseball on Nintendo. Today's Law Group, accident and injury lawyers. If you feel that you've been wronged, if you think that you've been wronged but aren't sure, contact the NACE Law Group, accident and injury lawyers, and mention that Al Galdi sent you. You could call 202-902-7611. You could also visit WashingtonDCInjuryLawyers.com and submit for a free, no-obligation case review. The NACE Law Group features compassionate lawyers and zealous advocates for its clients, led by the great Chris Nace and founded in 1979. The NACE Law Group is a Washington, D.C.-based family law firm that handles medical malpractice, personal injury, birth injury, legal malpractice, and consumer protection cases, offering aggressive advocacy for victims in Washington, D.C. and West Virginia. The NACE Law Group is outstanding. It will fight for you and your family. The NACE Law Group can help you and your family make difficult decisions. The NACE Law Group has recovered millions of dollars for the sick and injured. If you have a case, contact the NACE Law Group. Call 202-902-7611 or visit WashingtonDCInjuryLawyers.com and tell the NACE Law Group that Al Galdi sent you. That's 202-902-7611 or WashingtonDCInjuryLawyers.com, and make sure that you mention that Al Galdi sent you. The NACE Law Group, accident and injury lawyers. Will the Commanders' QB1 Jayden Daniels play in the team's game against the Las Vegas Raiders at Northwest Stadium this Sunday afternoon at 1? He is dealing with a knee injury that he suffered in the Commanders' 27-18 loss at the Green Bay Packers on Thursday Night Football on September 11th. The Commanders this week have put out injury reports following Wednesday afternoon's practice and Thursday afternoon's practice. Daniels did not practice on either day. Now, head coach Dan Quinn, during his pre-practice press conference on Wednesday afternoon, indicated that Friday would be the most telling day. So whether Daniels practices on Friday is significant. Quinn on Wednesday afternoon also said that he would have to see Daniels practice to some extent in order for him to play against the Raiders this Sunday afternoon. But as I have been saying, I would not be surprised at all if what is going on is gamesmanship, that Quinn already knows for sure whether Daniels will play against the Raiders and is just trying to keep the Raiders uninformed, and I would not blame Quinn for doing that one bit. Commanders offensive coordinator Kliff Kingsbury, he on Thursday did a pre-practice press conference that started right around 12 p.m. Kingsbury, during the presser, was asked if he could provide an update on Jayden Daniels. Here's what Kingsbury said.
No, he's just preparing mentally. You know, Marcus is getting the reps physically. Jayden preparing mentally, and we'll take it from there.
All right, there you go. Not much of an update from Kliff Kingsbury. I would not play Jayden Daniels against the Raiders on Sunday afternoon unless he is at or near 100%. Part of the reason for that, I trust the QB2, Marcus Mariota. This was Kliff Kingsbury on Thursday afternoon on Mariota.
Yeah, last year, just being around him for a year, when we signed him back, we felt like we have two starters in the building, which is rare in this league. So anytime he was asked to play or practice or even on scout team, he's been phenomenal. So he treats like a pro, as a leader on the team, despite not being the starter, which is hard to do, and can't say enough good things about him. So if he has to go, I'm sure he'll be ready.
Okay, also from the Commanders' injury report for Thursday afternoon's practice, on offense, receiver Noah Brown did not practice for a second consecutive day, groin and knee. Tight end John Bates did not practice for a second consecutive day, groin. Both Brown and Bates could be out for Sunday afternoon, but three players who were limited participants in Wednesday afternoon's practice were full participants in Thursday afternoon's practice. Left guard Brandon Coleman shoulder, tight end Colson Yankoff hip, and running back Jeremy McNichols' hamstring. Additionally, receiver Deebo Samuel Sr. did not practice on Thursday afternoon, but for a personal reason. On defense, just one player on the injury report for Thursday afternoon's practice. Cornerback Trey Amos was a limited participant in practice for a second consecutive day due to a shoulder, but the Commanders this week have placed 3 players on the reserve/injured list due to injuries suffered in that loss at the Packers. The Commanders on Monday afternoon announced having placed running back Austin Eckler and edge defender Dietrich Wise Jr. on the reserve/injured list, off each guy in that loss at the Packers suffering a season-ending injury. Eckler, a torn Achilles, Wise, a quadriceps injury. And the Commanders on Wednesday morning announced having placed cornerback Jonathan Jones on the reserve/injured list, this due to a hamstring injury that he suffered in that loss at the Packers. Austin Eckler being done for the season. That means that running back Chris Rodriguez Jr. is set to be active for the first time in 3 games for the Commanders this regular season. I have neither understood nor liked him being healthy and active for each of the Commanders' first 2 games. The Commanders' depth chart for this week, an unofficial depth chart, keep that in mind, does list Jacory Croskey-Merritt, a.k.a. Bill, as the RB1, and Bill needs more carries. Bill, in the loss at the Packers, 4 carries for 17 yards, no receptions on 1 target. He played on 22% of the Commanders' offensive snaps, and him playing on just 22% of the Commanders' offensive snaps certainly stood out. I mean, running back Jeremy McNichols in that game played on 23% of the Commanders' offensive snaps. McNichols played more than Bill, and so that has led to the thought that the team doesn't trust Bill in pass protection. Well, consider this exchange between Commanders insider John Keim of ESPN and Kliff Kingsbury on Thursday afternoon.
With Croskey-Merritt, if he's obviously going to get more touches or time or whatever, what's the challenge for him? What are some things that you're going to need to see out of him if he's in that role?
Yeah, just continue to progress. And I would say playing without the ball. I think every time he's touched it, good things happen. It's just, as a young player, there's a lot of things you haven't seen, whether it's pass pro, leading for somebody else, running the proper route technique, things of that nature. So he's just got to keep coming. But I've been really impressed by his work ethic and staying on top of it, and he's definitely improved each week.
Yeah, that does sound like the Commanders want to see more from Jacory Croskey-Merritt in terms of pass protection. Still, he needs to have more than 4 carries. Him getting just 4 carries in the loss at the Packers was ridiculous. Croskey-Merritt in the 21-6 win over the New York Giants at Northwest Stadium on September 6th had 10 carries for 82 yards and a touchdown, had no receptions on 1 target, played on 33% of the Commanders' offensive snaps. He became the first player in NFL history selected 200th or later in an NFL draft to have at least 75 rushing yards and at least 1 rushing touchdown in his NFL regular season debut. Commanders defensive coordinator Joe Whitt Jr., he did a pre-practice press conference late Thursday morning. Interesting opening statement from Whitt. Some good stuff on the defense over the team's first 2 games of this regular season. Some good stuff on the Raiders offense, and also high praise for interior defensive lineman Javon Kinlaw. Take a listen.
New York, I thought, we came out and played the way that we should. The defensive line played really well, highlighting Kinlaw. He was violent all over the place. We knew that Russell had the ability, as you saw this last game, to shoot the ball vertically. And I thought secondary did a nice job of now allowing the balls to get over the top. And the D-line did a nice job of pressuring. All right, going to the Green Bay game. We knew that misdirection and eye discipline was a must. We did not do a good job in the eye discipline category, and that allowed some big plays. The tight end hit the big play up the seam. New York ran the exact same, a similar concept. They ran it slightly different. Covered the New York game, and this game we didn't. The eyes weren't as true. They had some insert boots that were ran pretty well, and but once again, our eye discipline wasn't there. I thought the hitting and the running was still there that game, but when points were going to be at a premium and the score is 17-10 in the fourth quarter, we got to make sure that we find the way to get that thing done. Now, transition into this game here. veteran quarterback and Geno, strong arm, talented, can put the ball up, has eligibles on the outside that can really go and get in and stretch the field. A dynamic young tight end that, when you talk about being one of the best receiving threats, you have to almost treat him like a receiver. He's just a dynamic player. I remember watching him when he was at Georgia when he was a freshman, and I was like, if he came out, he'd probably be the first tight end to get drafted if he came out as a freshman. So I have a lot of respect for him. The running back, man, he's just good, man. Natural leverage. He has the ability to run through arm tackles. You have to get to his legs. You have to get multiple people there. The offensive line's blocking very well. 74 is a really, really good player. He doesn't give up much. So, we have our work cut out for us this game, but we just need to play our game. We play the way that we played the first game. And like I said, Green Bay, our eyes weren't true. The running hidden wasn't there, but we just had to clean up our eye discipline and not allow those explosive plays up the field. But one last thing, I just think that Kinlaw again played really well against Green Bay. I heard some people say they beat us in the trenches. They beat us because our eyes weren't good. The guys up front, they put the ball on the perimeter. They had receivers run the ball. It wasn't the running back run game that hurt us in that standpoint.
All right, lots more on the Raiders next segment via our conversation with Commanders insider Tashan Reed of the Washington Post. He just joined the Post off having covered the Raiders for The Athletic since April 2020. But interesting to hear Joe Whitt make it a point to praise Javon Kinlaw. So far, so good for Kinlaw with the Commanders, off them this past March signing him as an unrestricted free agent to a reported 3-year, $45 million contract with $30 million fully guaranteed at signing. We also heard Whitt bring up the Commanders defense in the loss at the Packers, having been guilty of bad eye discipline. Dan Quinn has mentioned that too. What exactly does bad eye discipline mean? Joe Whitt on Thursday morning gave us an explanation, and then you'll hear a follow-up exchange with Commanders insider Ben Standig.
All right, you understand when the call is called, okay, where are my keys? All right, what am I looking at? If I'm in man coverage, all right, make sure my eyes are on my man. If I'm in a combination where, all right, there's a possibility of a swap, the three guys that are in that combination, we're all keying the same thing, okay? We go through our fast motion rules, understanding who's taking one out, who's taking two out, who's taking three out when they get into a loaded concept. So it's not a simplistic answer because of different calls bring different, keys and reads, but it's nothing that we weren't prepared for. We splashed Green Bay plays in. Now, we didn't tell the players that, but all through in camp because it was a Thursday night game. There was only going to be one game prior, so the concepts weren't concepts that we didn't think they were doing. We just didn't play it well, at the wrong time.
Do you think last year there was an issue in that department, or was it just something that you?
I'm not worried about last year, just to be honest with you.
I just mean from a development standpoint.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but I'm not worried about last year. I'm not trying to, we didn't play well enough to win the Green Bay game. Okay, the reason we didn't play well enough, we didn't have great eye discipline. I'm trying to answer the question for you, so.
All right, our guy Ben Standig agitating, irritating Joe Whitt. Also notable from Joe Whitt on Thursday morning was an explanation for why linebacker Frankie Luvu, who was so good last season, right, has been so quiet so far this regular season. Luvu, over the 2 games, 0 sacks, 0 tackles for loss, 0 quarterback hits, 0 forced fumbles, 0 interceptions. So the Commanders, over the first 2 games this regular season, have neither committed a turnover nor generated a takeaway. But what's going on with Frankie Luvu? Well, here was Whitt on Thursday morning on Luvu.
Frankie, we had some conversations this week. The first 2 games, people are treating him more like a big, so he's getting more protections turned to him, getting more blocks by the tackles and the linemen other than the back, where last year he got more of the back. And that's what he has to, when you produce and you show what you did, to have the type of season that he had last year, you're going to be treated as such. And so we have some things that we're going to do schematically to do it, but understanding that they're still, when he gets up there, they're going to treat him as a big and they're going to put the back on somebody else.
Okay, good to hear that from Joe Whitt. We had been wondering what was going on with Frankie Luvu. Two injury items of note with the Raiders, tight end Brock Bowers and former Commander safety Jeremy Chinn. Each on Thursday was a limited participant in practice for a second consecutive day. Bowers is dealing with a knee issue. Chinn is dealing with a pectoral ailment. All right, football and food, two beautiful things, right? They go so well together. Well, as football season is underway, now is the perfect time to get yourself or someone who you care about Omaha Steaks. And here is a great deal for listeners of the Al Galdi podcast. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide during Omaha Steaks' Red Hot Sale event. And for an extra $35 off, use the promo code ALGALDI at checkout. Omaha Steaks delivers the world's best steak experience. Enjoy USDA-certified tender steaks, juicy burgers, cozy and convenient comfort meals like chicken and pork, plus tailgating favorites like chicken wings, smash burgers, and big deli-style franks. Also, Omaha Steaks offers great desserts. I love Omaha Steaks food. My wife and kids love Omaha Steaks food. There's no risk. Every bite is backed by a 100% guarantee. And you're supporting one of this country's great companies. Omaha Steaks is a family-owned company that has been America's original butcher since 1917. Treat yourself and your family or someone who you care about to Omaha Steaks and take advantage of the great deal for listeners of the Al Galdi podcast. Go to omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide during Omaha Steaks' Red Hot Sale event. And for an extra $35 off, use the promo code ALGALDI at checkout. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $35 off with the promo code ALGALDI at checkout. See site for details. We shall see which of the Commanders' injured players do play and do not play in the team's game against the Las Vegas Raiders at Northwest Stadium this Sunday afternoon at 1. But whoever plays, what will they be facing in the Raiders? I am very pleased to welcome to the Al Galdi podcast Commanders insider Tashan Reed of the Washington Post. He, on September 11th, announced having joined the Post. He, prior to his time with the Post, had covered the Raiders for The Athletic since April 2020. And so we have Tashan on to get intel on the Raiders, who up until a week ago, he had been covering for years. You could follow Tashan on X at Tashan Reed, and Tashan is spelled Tashan. Hey, Tashan, how are you?
Pretty good. Just moved out here to DC, so still getting settled out here. It's pretty crazy making this transition. The Raiders playing, that was their first game that they played that I haven't covered since 2019. So that's kind of crazy to see. So starting to hit that as real, make this transition and flipping over to the Commanders' perspective, but definitely looking ahead to the Sunday to see these two teams face off.
The Raiders in the NFL's 2025 regular season, like the Commanders, are 1-1, a 2013 win at the New England Patriots on September 7th, and a 29 home loss to the Los Angeles Chargers on Monday Night Football late night this past Monday night. What stands out to you about the Raiders' 1-1 start?
Yeah, I think this is a team that is in transition. I think we knew that coming into the season. This roster, just doesn't have a ton of talent. They do have a few blue chip players. You look at Geno Smith, Max Crosby, Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, but it's a really young team. They're sort of the inverse of the Commanders, who really veteran laden, like the Raiders under Pete Carroll and John Spikes. They decided to go all in on this youth movement. To develop pieces for the future. And kind of a trade-off is you're going to have, some weak spots on the roster and, some guys who have some more bumps in the road as they sort of find their way in the league. And, offensively, while I believe that Geno and offensive coordinator Chip Kelly and Ashton Jeanty were all big upgrades, they still, lack in some key areas. The offensive line has had their struggles, which we saw last night. The receiver group is lacking as well. Defensively, I would say they have concerns at all three levels. And so this is a team that, they can be feisty, they can be competitive. And I don't think this is a team that's going to roll over per se, but they lack sort of that overall depth and talent that you need to consistently win those games in the NFL.
The Raiders this past January 25th announced the hiring of Pete Carroll as head coach. He on Monday turned 74, although he has the energy of someone who's 24. What do you think about the Raiders having hired Carroll as head coach?
Yeah, I think it was a sound hire. they really had their eyes, I guess every team did, almost this offseason. They had a search, set on Ben Johnson, the former Lions offensive coordinator who went on to take the Bears job. Minority owner Tom Brady was somebody who was really, pushing heavy for Ben Johnson as he got involved in the hiring process. And that was their number one option for sure. But once, he decided to take the Bears job, they had to pivot and reevaluate their other options. And at that point, I think the best one was Pete Carroll. He's a guy that has a ton of experience, obviously, the oldest head coach in NFL. I guess nobody has more experience than he does. But you've seen him, be a proven winner at multiple levels, whether it's college or NFL. You know that he knows what he's doing. And while he's getting up there, he has sort of this charisma and energy and passion for the game that belies his age. That gave him confidence that he can still reinvigorate the locker room and instill his culture. And so I would say that took effect pretty quickly with the Raiders. The guys bought in, whether that's the players or the coaching staff, and they're behind Carroll and believe in him. I think now it's just a matter of getting him the players that he needs to get this franchise really headed in the right direction.
You mentioned Tom Brady. We, of course, have the Tom Brady controversy. He is a limited partner with the Raiders. He also is an analyst for Fox telecasts of NFL games. He was part of the telecast of the Commanders' 21-6 win over the New York Giants at Northwest Stadium on September 7th. Television announcers, as we know, get special access to the teams for which the announcers are doing games. So Brady, in the lead-up to that Commanders win over the Giants, had special access to the Commanders. And now the team for which he is part owner is playing at the Commanders. And during the ESPN telecast of that Raiders loss to the Chargers late night this past Monday night, had the scene that has gone viral. Brady wearing a headset in the Raiders coaching booth during the game. Now, Brady did not violate any NFL rules. A statement from NFL spokesman Brian McCarthy on Tuesday, quote, "There are no policies that prohibit an owner from sitting in the coach's booth or wearing a headset during a game. Brady was sitting in the booth in his capacity as a limited partner," end quote. The Raiders this past January 24th announced the hiring of John Spytek as general manager. But to be clear, Brady is very much involved in Raiders football operations, right?
He's intimately involved, and that was something that they haven't really been shy about. Back when he got approved as a minority owner last October, owner Mark Davis said he's going to be very involved. So this was always the plan, and this is something that's been a couple years in the works for Mark Davis. I talked to him a few times about this over the years, and he's felt like since the death of his father, Al Davis, back in 2011, the franchise has really lacked sort of this presence of somebody that has a high level of football knowledge that isn't the head coach or the GM. You kind of think back to those Raiders glory days. It was Ron Wolf, it was John Madden, or Tom Flores, and then it was Al Davis. That was sort of the power triumvirate that they had that was leading them to the Super Bowls that they won. And since his father passed, they haven't really had that. And I think this agreement with Brady, the vision was for him to become that individual. Now he can't officially, because of league rules, he can't be called the vice president of football operations or any sort of title like that. But that's essentially what he's doing, right? He was on the hiring panel for their head coach and GM searches. When they're about to make major moves, like for example, trading for Geno Smith, he came down to Vegas to meet with the coaching staff and the GM and help make the decision to do that. They had him, evaluate Cam Miller, a quarterback they took late in the draft, and the other quarterbacks in the draft ahead of, taking somebody this April. He's been in town for games, practices, meetings. He talks to Pete Carroll, John Spytek, Alex Guerrero daily. He talks to Chip Kelly multiple times a week. So, it doesn't get too much more involved for that than a guy who isn't actually a team employee, technically. And so, he's integrally involved with the franchise. And really, even though he's not the controlling owner, he's sort of been given this opportunity to shape the franchise in his image in a way, which is a pretty unique situation. I'm not sure that we've really seen something quite like this before. And I know that particularly with him being a broadcaster is something that makes a lot of people and fans of other teams uncomfortable, but it's something that the league has been fine with letting happen so far.
The Raiders this past February 4th announced the hiring of Chip Kelly as offensive coordinator. What do you make of the Raiders going with him as their OC?
Yeah, it was one of those things where you understand why a lot of people have pause with him, given how, his NFL tenure went with the Philadelphia Eagles and then also with the San Francisco 49ers. But, the belief is that he's grown a lot during that time, and his offense has evolved to become more multiple, and he's not as stagnant as he was back then. I mean, we saw it with Ohio State last season. It wasn't just like the old Oregon offenses where they're just, pushing the tempo every time and running 4 and 5 receiver sets. Like, no, they ran a lot of 12 personnel and heavier sets. They had 2,000-yard rushers. And so that fostered a belief that it was a different Chip Kelly from a schematic standpoint. I think just as big of a question, I think, for me was, Chip Kelly in terms of his interpersonal skills. So that was a big issue, particularly with the Eagles, is that he really lost favor with the locker room. And while he's not the head coach, like, that's still important as a coordinator, right? Like, and even working with your staff members, like, you can't be this sort of, authoritarian type of figure, or people aren't really going to enjoy working with you, right? And so I think that piece, I think we've seen that he's involved from a play calling perspective. But I think that piece of it is really going to determine whether or not he ends up being successful as an NFL offensive coordinator. And the Raiders made a huge bet on him because his salary, he's making $6 million a year. That's more than a good amount of head coaches in the NFL. So obviously they were really confident in him and pulling the trigger on that hire. And I think part of that is, since Ben Johnson was their top option, like, obviously he was going to be the play caller if they got him. And so since they didn't, they really put a premium on that spot because, Pete Carroll, that's just not his bag, or he's not going to be calling offensive plays. And so they wanted to make sure that they got their preferred option there, and it ended up being Kelly.
The Raiders this past March 13th announced having acquired Geno Smith via trade with the Seattle Seahawks. So the Raiders traded a third-round pick in the 2025 NFL Draft to the Seahawks for Smith. This is his age 35 season. He is the Raiders' QB1. He is coming off a hideous performance in the loss to the Chargers late night this past Monday night. Just 24 for 43 for just 180 yards, no touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. Andy took 3 sacks. What was the thought process in the Raiders getting Smith to be their QB1?
So a lot of it, obviously him and Pete Carroll have a ton of familiarity from their years working together with the Seattle Seahawks. He started out as a backup there and ultimately being a guy that replaced Russell Wilson and surprised just about everybody in the league with that season that he had back in 2022, that breakout comeback player of the year season. He hadn't quite reclaimed that level since then. He's been a good player, but not quite that top 10 quarterback that he looked like that season. But nonetheless, they still were interested in him. I think they believe that some of his struggles last year where he threw 15 interceptions were about his surroundings. The offensive line wasn't as good. The run game wasn't there. They had some play caller issues and turnover, and Carroll wasn't there last season either. And so they believe that with better circumstances, they could see Geno elevate back to that type of player that they saw in 2022. We saw that in week 1, I would say against the Patriots. He lit it up on the road and suboptimal situations that week, but he had a pretty rough one going 3 picks. And I think, a lot of the reason why I don't think Geno Smith doesn't have a lot of arm talent, or he's not mobile, or he's not smart, all those things. I think the Raiders just don't really have great surroundings around him right now. As I mentioned earlier, the offensive line is an issue. And so even having Genty in the backfield, the run game hasn't found its footing. His pass protection isn't there. His receiving options are shoddy. And so, and Brock Bowers, obviously was dealing with that knee injury that he has. So he's not in full form either. And so, I don't think it's, if he doesn't have the greatest season, this year, I don't think it means that they made a mistake in getting Geno Smith, but I think it just means that they have a lot of work to do to build up around him. And that would be the case with any quarterback that they got, right? Like there's certain guys who can, look at Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. They're 0-2 right now, and their offense has been struggling. And, he's arguably, top 3, top 5 quarterback ever, and if you don't have those circumstances, it's going to be tough going. And I think that's where the Raiders are with Geno right now.
Much more with Tashan Reed in moments, but are you looking to upgrade the heart of your home? Whether it is time to repair your gas fireplace, modernize your hearth, or simply add more comfort and style, Nova Fireplace and Stove is Northern Virginia's go-to expert for heat, safety, and home transformation. Nova Fireplace and Stove is a family-owned, fully licensed and insured company with over-the-top credentials, gas and electrical master's licenses, a Class A contractor's license, and a long list of 5-star reviews to back all of this up. Nova Fireplace and Stove has a beautiful showroom in Woodbridge, Virginia. That's where your dream fireplace begins. Come in and see Nova Fireplace and Stove's stunning displays, including custom fireplace glass doors and stone refacing options that can completely transform the look of your fireplace. From sleek and modern to rustic and cozy, Nova Fireplace and Stove has something for every style. And here's what else Nova Fireplace and Stove offers: gas fireplace service and repair, chimney cleaning and brickwork repair, generator installation, panel replacements, and water heater repairs, smoke detectors, security lights, and more. Every job includes a free in-home estimate, and for listeners of the Al Galdi podcast, Nova Fireplace and Stove is offering $25 off any service. Just mention this ad. Nova Fireplace and Stove only works in Northern Virginia and thus knows the homes, the codes, and the people. Your satisfaction is 100% guaranteed. So stop by the showroom, see what's possible, and let Nova Fireplace and Stove help you bring warmth, safety, and style to your space. You can also visit NovaFireplaceandStove.com. Nova Fireplace and Stove, where comfort meets craftsmanship and your fireplace becomes the heart of your home. We're talking Commanders-Raiders with Commanders insider Tashan Reed of the Washington Post. He just joined the Post off having covered the Raiders for The Athletic since April 2020. The Raiders this past January 31st announced the retaining of Patrick Graham as defensive coordinator. This is his fourth season as the Raiders defensive coordinator, and this is the third head coach under whom Graham has served as Raiders defensive coordinator. Josh McDaniels, former Redskins linebacker Antonio Pierce, and now Pete Carroll. The Raiders have a high-level edge defender in Max Crosby. What else do they have on defense?
I think, that defensive end group overall is probably the strongest position on the team. Crosby stands out, but Malcolm Kuntz, he had a big season in 2023. He missed all last year with a torn ACL, and so people probably, haven't thought of him in a while. But I think once he gets back rolling and up to speed, he could be a force. Tyree Wilson has taken a nice step forward in year 3. He's the guy that he plays inside and outside, so you can see him move around at defensive line. Besides that, it's just not, much softer on the defensive side of the ball. They have like a couple guys like Isaiah, Jeremy Chin and Isaiah Polamau back at safety. It's a solid safety duo. But it's a defense that needs a lot of help for sure. They have Patrick Graham in a pretty tough spot, and so he's a really creative defensive coordinator. He's going to throw a lot of different looks at you. He's going to do everything he can to try to create an advantage, but the personnel isn't great for sure.
The Raiders, as you said, have a lot of younger players, but at the same time, the team has a head coach who just turned 74, has a QB1 who's in his age 35 season, signed a veteran in Max Crosby to a big money contract extension this past March. How would you describe what the Raiders are doing? Rebuilding, retooling, reloading? What's going on here?
Word I've been using is they're in this transitional phase. They're definitely not all in. They had a ton of cap space this offseason. And didn't really use it. They traded for Geno and extended him, but they didn't make any other splashy moves in free agency. They extended Max Crosby, like you mentioned, extended Colton Miller. But in terms of additions, most of their additions of note were through the draft. And they kind of just passed on this free agency class. And this wasn't the best free agency class either. It was considered a bad one by most, people in the league. And I think that's why you didn't see a bunch of big deals getting handed out. But nonetheless, they weren't particularly aggressive when it came to adding veteran talent to the roster this season. But they also didn't tear it down. You don't trade for a veteran quarterback, 34 years old like Geno Smith, if that's what you're doing either, right? Or hire a coach who's that old. So it's not a full rebuild. It's not a full all-in. I just think this is sort of a set the foundation year, instill the culture, put your system in on both sides of the ball, start to build up, the base of what you're working with. And then next season, in the offseason, I think you'll see them be more aggressive and really sort of try to push to go for it.
Final question, and this is a large topic, but the Raiders, since winning the AFC Championship for the 2002 season, have not done well. 14 double-digit loss regular seasons over the last 22 seasons, 2003 through 2024. Just 2 playoff appearances during that span, the 2016 and 2021 seasons. The team's head coach for that 2016 playoff season, by the way, was future Washington defensive coordinator Jack Del Rio. But why is it that the Raiders, this iconic NFL franchise, have been so bad for so long?
That is a big one. I think A lot of reasons, but the connecting thread overall is impulsiveness at the ownership level. I think has been a big piece of it. Towards the end, especially of Al Davis's life, like his trigger was pretty quick when it came to firing head coaches and getting guys out of there. And it was just kind of hard to find consistency as a franchise when you're operating that way, right? And I think Mark Davis, like when he took over, I'm sure he thought he would be different in that area, but he really hasn't been either. The Gruden situation, that was a unique one. Like he didn't decide to fire John Gruden. That was something that, he resigned obviously as part of those emails that ironically came from the investigation into the Commanders back a few years ago. But since then, it's been that cycle that's continued. Josh McDaniels got a year and a half. Antonio Pierce got a year. And I'm not saying that those coaches were good head coaches, but, you keep pulling the trigger on guys that quickly and starting over. And also just, up front, making the wrong decision with who you hire. That's how you get into that sort of endless cycle of ineptitude that they've been in, for, I guess you could say, about 20 years now. So it really starts at the ownership level. And I think that's a big reason why you saw Mark Davis, accept accountability for that, the last couple of years and make that decision to bring in somebody like Tom Brady and the other, he brought in some other minority owners the past year too. He sold about 25.5% of the team over the course of the past year to get more people involved, whether it's on the football side or the business side, because he's acknowledged that, hey, obviously the way I've been doing this isn't working. We need some new voices in here. And so that's what guys like Brady and others who are in the ownership group now are supposed to be doing.
Commanders insider Tashan Reed of the Washington Post just joined the Post off having covered the Raiders for The Athletic since April 2020. Tashan, thanks. All the best.
Thanks for having me, man. You have a good one.
All right, the Tom Brady thing is interesting. It's hard to say how much inside information he truly gets as an analyst for Fox, but the optics of this, of course, are not good. I mean, him doing games for Fox and getting this special access to teams while also being a limited partner of the Raiders and being heavily involved in Raiders football operations. We on ESPN's Get Up on Tuesday morning had this from host Mike Greenberg, ESPN NFL insider Dan Graziano, and ESPN NFL analyst Jason McCourty.
Social media loses its collective mind, conflict of interest. We all understand how these conversations go. What can you tell us, Dan, about what the rules are?
Well, I mean, first of all, like if he's part owner of the team, like
right.
If he wants to talk to the coaches, like that it was made clear when he bought whatever percentage of the team, 10% of the team, that he was going to be involved in the operations of the team. So that's not a surprise. The issue, of course, that people are raising is he's also the lead, broadcaster on Fox's Sunday games.
Right.
And in that capacity, he gets to go to production meetings, which are, behind the scenes, off the record conversations with coaches and players ahead of the game to help the broadcast crew know what's going on during the game. And he gets to go to practices. Now, the league put some rules in last year that because of his association with the Raiders, he couldn't do a normal schedule that a broadcaster would do. But even this year, they've relaxed some of those rules. So it doesn't feel like, even though there are people around the league that complain about this, it doesn't feel like the league's interested in doing anything about it, resolving that conflict of interest issue. He's also way overdressed for the coaches. Right? Like, that's the other thing, right? Like, he looks out of place up there.
My understanding is that he attends those meetings with the coaches during the week virtually, meaning he's not actually in the building and he doesn't attend the practices. So there were some rules that remain in place for him. His first year, he wasn't allowed to speak to them at all. So there's that. Let's dive into whether this really is a thing or not. Like, we live in a world now where we make everything into such a big deal. You do games every single week. How much information do you get, would you say you get from those conversations that if you wanted to be clear, you never would do this, but if you wanted to use them for the benefit of another team, how much of it could you actually?
It's such a tough question because it's so different depending upon the coach. But in those meetings, you are fully discussing what the team is going on that week, specific to a single game. So you may get into what players are available for the game that given Sunday. You may get into a little bit of what your philosophy is going into that game. So you do get a lot of information that if you went out and just spread it out, it would be very difficult for those teams. That's why those meetings are very different than when a head coach stands up at a podium and answers questions from a reporter. That is a more relaxed setting that you can let your guard down some. But at the same time, most head coaches, when they walk into that meeting, they still understand you're a part of the media, and they're not going to tell you their entire game.
And that, to me, is the key. You as an NFL team are not required to tell Tom Brady, as an analyst for Fox, anything in particular. In fact, Commanders head coach Dan Quinn got asked about this a few weeks ago. During Quinn's post-practice press conference on September 5th, the Friday before the win over the Giants, had this exchange between Commanders insider Ben Standig and Quinn.
Every week, head coach meets with the television broadcast team. This week, it's Tom Brady is part of that. It's obviously a unique situation because of his role with the Raiders, and he has some access to you guys. You also are playing them in week 3. How do you approach these meetings in general, and does the fact that I guess we don't know exactly what his influence is with the team, how does that affect how you handle this?
Yeah, it's unique for sure, but they have a job to do too. So I get that. Like, that's our, responsibility to help them, give some insights, what it could be, what could be there for the game. So it's really just for this game, that's what I think about, but not just, because of Tom calling it and his, relationship obviously with the Raiders, but really in every game, because it's just, what do you have to do to win this game? The information here wouldn't be applied, to another team in that way.
Yeah, and so from that standpoint, this Tom Brady controversy is overrated. The optics are bad, but the reality may not be much of anything. Hey, if you enjoyed this podcast, check out BGO Blind Pig, the official podcast of BGObsession.com. BGO Blind Pig is great. It is a roundtable discussion of the Commanders. It's like you and a bunch of your buddies who are Commanders fans are hanging out and talking about the team. The conversation is smart and fun and respectful. You can find the BGO Blind Pig podcast on YouTube and on any major podcast provider. Make BGObsession.com the home for your burgundy and gold obsession, and make the BGO Blind Pig podcast part of your Commanders podcast rotation. So whereas the Commanders have had some change with their team name over the years, the Raiders have had some change with their team location over the years. The all-time names for the Commanders franchise since its first season, the 1932 NFL season: the Boston Braves, the Boston Redskins, the Washington Redskins, the Washington football team, and now the Washington Commanders. The Raiders have been the Raiders since their first season, the 1960 AFL season, but the Raiders have gone from the Oakland Raiders to the Los Angeles Raiders to back to the Oakland Raiders to now the Las Vegas Raiders. Week 3 of the NFL's 2025 regular season gives us the 1-1 Commanders against the 1-1 Las Vegas Raiders in Northwest Stadium this Sunday afternoon at 1. Washington is 7-8 all-time against the Raiders in regular season and postseason games. Among the losses, the Skins' 38-9 loss to the Raiders at Tampa Stadium in Super Bowl 18 on January 22nd, 1984. But Washington has won each of its last 4 regular season games against the Raiders. The last game, December 5th, 2021, a 17-15 Washington football team win at the Las Vegas Raiders. My friends, it is that time, the time to rhyme. It is time for Rhyming Keys, my keys to a Commanders win in rhyming fashion. Now, these rhymes, they are not meant to be good, and they are not good. They are only meant to make a few points. In fact, I have a saying for this segment, indeed a rhyme for this segment. The saying is counterintuitive, but trust me, the saying is true. The worse the rhyme, the better the time. And so here we go. Hardcore analysis combined with scheduled fun. Rhyming keys for Commanders Raiders. How do the Commanders win this game? We now rhyme the ways. Rhyming key number 1. This is for Commanders offensive coordinator Kliff Kingsbury and the Commanders offensive line. Do not relax against Max. right. We shall see if the Commanders QB1 Jayden Daniels plays on Sunday afternoon given his knee injury. But whether he or QB2 Marcus Mariota is the Commanders starting quarterback, they have to do a better job against Raiders edge defender Max Crosby off getting shredded by edge defender Micah Parsons in the 27-18 loss at the Green Bay Packers on Thursday Night Football on September 11th. Crosby, like Parsons, is one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. Kliff Kingsbury's scheme and play calling in that loss at the Packers left a lot to be desired. And the Commanders' offensive line in that loss at the Packers, not good, especially the right side, right tackle Josh Connerly Jr. and right guard Nick Gallegretti. They in the loss at the Packers, per True Media, combined to allow 15 pressures, 9 hurries, and 4 sacks. Now, Crosby did have a down 2024 season by his standards, in part due to an ankle injury, and he is not coming off a great game. Crosby and the Raiders' 29 home loss to the Los Angeles Chargers on Monday Night Football late night this past Monday night had just 1 pressure over 31 pass rush snaps per Pro Football Focus. But Crosby is plenty capable. Crosby over the 2021 through 2023 regular seasons averaged 94 pressures per regular season per Pro Football Focus. And so rhyming key number 1, this for Kliff Kingsbury and the Commanders' offensive line: do not relax against Max. Rhyming key for Commanders Raiders number 2. This is for the Commanders' offense as a whole: do not continue to be sterile in facing this defense of Pete Carroll. Raiders head coach Pete Carroll, a head coach with a defensive background. Will the Commanders offense give us some explosives on Sunday afternoon? The Commanders per Sharp Football Analysis for this regular season through week 2 ranked number 30 out of 32 NFL teams in percentage of offensive plays that gained 20 or more yards, 3.08. Just 4 of the Commanders' 130 offensive plays this regular season have been plays of at least 20 yards. That is awful. This offense desperately needs to be more explosive. The lack of explosive plays is due to a variety of factors. Inaccuracy by Jayden Daniels, drops by pass catchers, lack of separation by pass catchers, lack of yak by pass catchers, bad pass protection. But whatever the reasons, just 4 of the Commanders' 130 offensive plays this regular season being plays of at least 20 yards is unacceptable. The Raiders over their 2 games this regular season have allowed 7 offensive plays of at least 20 yards. Not a lot. The Commanders' offense, from an explosive play standpoint, needs to get going. Does that happen in this game? Big question. Rhyming key number 2. This for the Commanders' offense as a whole: do not continue to be sterile in facing this defense of Pete Carroll. And rhyming key for Commanders Raiders number 3. This is for the Commanders' defense: make Geno your Nino. I told you, these rhymes are not good. These rhymes are quite bad. But the Raiders QB1, Geno Smith, this is his age 35 season, and he is coming off a horrendous performance in the Raiders' loss to the Chargers. He over 43 pass attempts, threw for just 180 yards. That works out to a yards per pass attempt of just 4.19. He had no touchdown passes versus 3 interceptions, and he took 3 sacks. The Raiders' rushing offense is really struggling. The Raiders took running back Ashton Jeanty with the number 6 overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft out of Boise State. But per Sharp Football Analysis, Raiders running backs over the first 2 weeks of this regular season failed to gain yardage on 37.1% of carries. Highest such rate in the NFL. The overall league rate was 19.3%. So this very much could be, hopefully will be, a game in which the Commanders make the Raiders one-dimensional. The Commanders' defense in that loss at the Packers was not good. The pass rush was underwhelming, the pass coverage was atrocious, and the run defense was bad. This game against the Raiders sets up as a bounce-back game for the Commanders' defense. And so, rhyming key number 3, this for the Commanders' defense: make Geno your Nino. All right, it is prediction time. The consensus line per Action Network for this game as of Thursday morning was Commanders minus 3.5. I am taking the Commanders minus the 3.5, regardless of whether Jayden Daniels or Marcus Mariota is the team starting quarterback. If the Commanders are the team I think they are, we hope they are, They bounce back from the loss at the Packers with a solid win. The Raiders look terrible in their loss to the Chargers. Now, of course, the NFL week-to-week league, so I'm not just assuming that the Raiders will look terrible this Sunday afternoon, but the Commanders with this game have a big-time rest advantage in having last played on September 11th, and the Raiders having last played late night this past Monday night, and the Raiders are traveling for this game. Final score, Commanders 27, Raiders 17. Commanders running back Jacory Croskey-Merritt, the man known as Bill, 2 touchdown runs. All right, time now to talk college football. Time now for GaldiLocks, my picks for the 7 FBS teams of the Mid-Atlantic region: Maryland, Navy, Virginia Tech, Virginia, James Madison, Old Dominion, and Liberty. You surely have heard of GaldiLocks and the 3 Bears. Well, this is GaldiLocks, which helps you, as the great Snoop Dogg once said, make money, money.
Make money, money, make money, money, money.
That's right, Snoop. Make money, money. We have arrived at week 4 of the 2025 college football season. GaldiLocks in week 3 went 1-2. We'll go GaldiLocks in rapid-fire fashion, and then I want to talk about Maryland and also Virginia Tech. The betting lines that I'm using are consensus lines per Action Network as of Thursday morning. No game for Navy this week. The midshipmen have a bye week, and Navy's next game is home to Rice Saturday afternoon, September 27th at 3:30. No game for Old Dominion this week. The Monarchs have a bye week. ODU's next game is home to Liberty on Saturday evening, September 27th at 6. So 4 games to pick. Maryland at Wisconsin, Saturday at noon. The Terrapins +10. Their with this game has been major line movement. The Terps were +7.5 just a few days ago. The line is begging you to take Maryland. When Las Vegas wants you to go one way, you should go the other way. And so even though I went to the University of Maryland, give me Wisconsin, -10. Virginia, home to Stanford, Saturday night at 7:30. The Cavaliers -15.5. Give me Stanford +15.5. Virginia Tech home to Wofford, Saturday at noon. The Hokies -35.5. Their with this game has been massive line movement. Tech was -29.5 just a few days ago. The line is so begging you to take Wofford, especially off the head coach firing that we just had at Virginia Tech. And so give me Virginia Tech -35.5. James Madison at Liberty, Saturday afternoon at 3:30. The Dukes -9.5. Their with this game has been significant line movement. JMU was -11.5 just a few days ago. The line begging you to take James Madison, and so give me Liberty +9.5. The best sports betting philosophy is the one that acknowledges that we know nothing and that the Las Vegas odds makers and line movers, the sharps, they know everything. There's a reason that there are all of those nice big buildings in Las Vegas. That's because Vegas more often than not wins. So a basic premise of sports betting to me is not doing what Vegas wants you to do when it becomes apparent what Vegas wants you to do. And we this week have multiple games for which we could apply that philosophy with the line movements that I just described. All right, so conference openers for Maryland and Virginia on Saturday. Virginia home to Stanford Saturday night at 7:30. Stanford's head coach is interim head coach and former Maryland quarterback and former Indianapolis Colts and Carolina Panthers head coach Frank Reich. Maryland at Wisconsin, Saturday at noon. Wisconsin's QB1 is former Maryland quarterback Billy Edwards Jr., who transferred from Maryland to Wisconsin this past December. But Edwards has missed the Badgers' last 2 games due to a sprained knee. Wisconsin's last game was a 38-14 loss at then number 19 Alabama last Saturday afternoon. Billy Edwards, he went to Lake Braddock Secondary School in Burke, Virginia, transferred from Wake Forest to Maryland in the 2022 offseason. So he was with the Terps for 3 seasons, 2022 through 2024. Also, this game is the first collegiate road game for Maryland's true freshman QB1, Malik Washington. During Terps head coach Mike Loxley's press conference on Tuesday, had these exchanges.
Yeah, Mike. Assuming Billy goes on Saturday, and I'm guessing you guys are acting, how do you go about putting the relationship you have with him kind of on the shelf as you prepare for the game? And do you suspect, as the kickoff approaches and you see him on the field, the emotions might be a little bit different than any other game?
No. To all of those, we're going to prepare as if Billy's going to play. They've also shown they're a capable guy that has come in and won some games for them also. So, it's not our job to figure that piece out. We just got to prepare our team for their offense. It's not about Billy. It's not about me. It's not about Maryland. And we've always kept it that way. Our standard will continue to kind of lead us in how we prepare the opponent, the names, who we play doesn't matter. It's kind of what we've got to do. And we've kept that thing up pretty good. And I think it's worked. It served us well, so we'll keep going that direction.
Hey, Coach. For Malik, this is his first collegiate road game, and what you just said right there, it's going to be a pretty good environment at Wisconsin. What sort of nerves do you expect for a young player like him in their first road game, and is there anything that you guys as a staff do to prepare him for that environment?
Yeah, we do the same thing that we do with all first-year players. It is a great environment to play a football game. Most of us as a coaching staff, some of us as players have been there. And so we'll pipe the crowd noise in, which our communication can handle the noise from that standpoint. You can't mimic or show what it will be like. But what I've learned about Malik Washington pretty early is that I haven't seen it ever be too big. I think we've done a really good job in how we've brought him along and so that it isn't about him and being too big. And so we'll continue to do that. But this is why I've kind of said this will be a great barometer for what kind of team we have and what type of team we can be.
Well, I'm especially interested to see how the Terps defense does at Wisconsin on Saturday afternoon. The Terps for this season through week 3 were number 16 in the FBS in team defensive efficiency per ESPN. How legit is that Maryland defense? And then there is Virginia Tech. What now? Tech fell to 0-3 overall this season with a humiliating 45-26 loss to Old Dominion at Lane Stadium in Blacksburg, Virginia last Saturday night. And Tech on Sunday afternoon announced having fired head coach Brent Pry and having made offensive coordinator Phillip Montgomery as interim head coach. Tech is off to its first 0-3 start to a season since 1987. There has been talk that Hokies players quit in that loss to ODU. Here was Phillip Montgomery during a session with reporters on Wednesday on what he wants to see from the Hokies against Wofford. And then you'll hear a follow-up exchange with Hokies football insider Andy Bitter of Tech Sideline.
I want us to play complementary football. I want to see us play 4 quarters. The effort has been there. Even last week, as you look at all of it, our guys were battling. They were grinding till the end. But I want to see us play a complete game, and I want to see us feed off of each other and learn how to do that together.
This is obviously kind of an interesting time in college football, and this taking place so early in the season. Do you have to address the transfer situation where I know guys can still redshirt right now, so one at least has already gone to the portal? Do you address the team about that and those possibilities?
Yeah, we have conversations about it. That's where we are in today's college football. And so we have conversations about it. We want to make sure they understand what the information is and make sure it's accurate, because there's so much stuff out there that is not accurate. And so, as we sit down and have those conversations, whether it's as a group or one-on-one, we dive into all of that and make sure that we're all on the same page as we leave that room.
Yeah, that transfer thing is big. There is an NCAA rule that allows for a 30-day window during which players can enter the NCAA transfer portal if their head coach is fired. Are we about to see a mass exodus from the Hokies? Who they go with as their next head coach is going to be fascinating. Already, there have been pushes for 2 all-time great Virginia Tech players in D'Angelo Hall and Michael Vick to be candidates. D'Angelo Hall, a former Redskins, Atlanta Falcons, and Oakland Raiders cornerback. He was the Carolina Panthers assistant defensive backs coach for the 2023 and 2024 seasons. Michael Vick, former Atlanta Falcons, Philadelphia Eagles, New York Jets, and Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback. Yeah, Vick played for the Jets and Steelers, so he currently is Norfolk State's head coach. Hiring either of these guys, of course, would generate plenty of excitement, but also, of course, there's a lot more to being a great college football head coach in this era of the NCAA transfer portal and NIL than just generating excitement. And there's also this. Virginia Tech Director of Athletics, Whit Babcock. Is he about to get fired? Should he be fired? I know that a lot of Hokies fans think so. Whit Babcock was formally named Virginia Tech's Director of Athletics on January 24th, 2014. He inherited the legendary Frank Beamer as Hokies head coach in football, but Babcock has missed on his two football head coach hirings in Justin Fuente and Brent Pry. How many directors of athletics are even given the opportunity to go 0 for 3 on football head coach hirings? We shall see if Whit Babcock is long for his job as Virginia Tech Director of Athletics. Well, the Orioles on Thursday night suffered their 15th shutout loss in MLB's 2025 regular season, in which the O's now are an American League East worst 72-81. A 7-0 loss to the New York Yankees at Oriole Park at Camden Yards in Game 1 of a 4-game series. 15 of the Orioles' 81 losses have been shutout losses. 18.52% of the losses have been shutout losses, quite a few. And regarding the O's now being 72-81, they have clinched a non-winning regular season. The O's on Thursday night scored no runs, a total just 3 hits, worked just 2 walks, went 0 for 3 with runners in scoring position, and struck out 15 times. All 3 of the hits were singles. The O's got dominated by Yankee starting pitcher Max Fried. He tossed 7 scoreless innings with 13 strikeouts versus 1 walk. The Orioles starting pitcher in this 7-0 loss to the Yankees on Thursday night was Cade Povich. He allowed 3 runs in 5 innings. He gave up 5 hits, which were 2 doubles and 3 singles. He issued 4 walks. He did record 5 strikeouts. He threw 89 pitches, 51 strikes, 38 balls. So Povich put way too many guys on base, but the 5 strikeouts were good. He does generate strikeouts. Cade Povich was on the 15-day injured list from June 16th to August 4th due to left hip inflammation. He, at the major league level for this regular season, has the following stats: 21 games, including 19 starts, ERA of 5.06, whip of 1.46, but a strikeouts per 9 innings of 9.62. The Orioles' relief pitching in this 7-0 loss to the Yankees on Thursday night as a whole, not good, but 3 of the 4 relievers used by the O's in this game were good. 4 Orioles relievers combined to allow 4 runs in 4 innings. All of the runs came off Chase McDermott, who was a mess. He allowed 4 runs in a third of an inning. He, in the top of the 7th, allowed 4 runs on a double, a single, 3 walks, and a sac fly. He threw 24 pitches, just 8 strikes versus 16 balls. But Yennier Cano, he tossed a scoreless top of the 6th, despite giving up a one-out double and issuing a one-out walk. Jose Castillo, he in his Orioles debut, tossed 1 2/3 scoreless innings with 3 strikeouts. The O's on Monday afternoon announced having claimed Castillo off waivers from the Seattle Mariners, and Cade Stroud tossed a perfect top of the 9th with 2 swinging strikeouts. But how about this with Jose Castillo? He is the 69th different player used by the O's in a game this regular season, 1 shy of the MLB record set by the Miami Marlins last regular season. The Marlins in the 2024 regular season used an MLB record 70 different players. The O's in this regular season have used 69 different players. If that doesn't speak to how injury-ravaged the O's have been, I don't know what does. Next up for the O's are the final 3 games of this 4-game series against the Yankees at Oriole Park at Camden Yards. Game 2 Friday night at 7:05. Trevor Rogers will be the Orioles starting pitcher. Game 3 Saturday night at 7:05. Tomoyuki Sagano will be the Orioles starting pitcher. Game 4 Sunday afternoon at 1:35. Kyle Bradish will be the Orioles starting pitcher. And that'll do it for you and me for now. Keep the feedback coming. You can hit me up on X at Al Galdi. You can email me the Al Galdi podcast at yahoo.com. Monday's show, episode 1160. We'll have a lot for you on the Commanders, in-depth reaction to and analysis of their game against the Las Vegas Raiders at Northwest Stadium this Sunday afternoon at 1. Also on Monday's show, I'll talk college football, Nationals, and Orioles. We on Saturday have games for 5 of the 7 FBS teams of the Mid-Atlantic region. The Nats this weekend have a 3-game series at the New York Mets. The O's this weekend have the final 3 games of a 4-game series against the New York Yankees at Oriole Park at Camden Yards. Have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you on Monday.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won.